Hello and welcome to the show. Now, obstacle course racing has always been fantastic fun on whichever Forza game it is that we have competed in it. The way the game works, 4 people are the racers, while the rest of the lobby, as you can see here, take large vehicles such as Gurkhas or Hummers, position them around various racetracks to make obstacles for us to try and avoid. As we see the Evo here get things a little bit wrong. Now, the obstacle cars must leave enough of a space for the racers to be able to complete the course, and it has created many interesting races. However, when we first did this in Forza 6, as you saw, we were using Gurkhas and Hummers, and well, since then, there is a vehicle that would make for a better obstacle, of course, that being the Cadillac Limo. However, we were about to start off and go for a film because I fancied doing some more obstacle course racing, and then in the lobby, I got thinking, what if we were to race the Cadillac Limos rather than use them as the obstacles, use normal cars as obstacles? The vehicles that have tended to go well in the races were, the small, light, the most agile of cars for weaving in and out of the blockages. What if we were to take the limos racing, to try and get these things around the course while, still having to dodge all sorts of different challenges? And of course, because the players can move their roadblocks, their obstacles, once the races have gone past, it is a constantly changing track. So that's what we did. Everyone grabbed a B-class limo, these things, decent amount of power, they've been rear-wheel drive converted, and we would take them racing, starting at the Rio Mountain Circuit, where fitting 4 limos on the start line is a little bit tricky. Getting them going is even trickier. Of course, quite high-powered rear-wheel drive. One of them goes sideways and can cause all sorts of problems for everybody, so not much paint was left on the cars. Immediately in the first roadblock first chicane did take a little bit of a battering. The car on the inside got very much stuck, had nowhere to go and would drop to the back of this field. Also ignore the terrible in-car replay cameras. Forza, it doesn't do very well when it comes to replay. You get the idea though of these chicanes. Now, the lobby had voted to use RX-8s, as much to my dislike, but it had been voted to use RX-8s as the obstacle cars, so we see them dotted around, fairly normal size vehicle, if you will. And while there had been some bumping and some trading of paint on this opening of laps, the limos had indeed made it through. Now, the way that this game mode plays out, actually quite interesting. It has almost a natural catch-up built into it, because the leader is always going to be the first one to find the obstacles that are laid out before him. You're sat in second, you can watch what the leader does, and if the leader does happen to have a little accident with the roadblocks, it will often push cars out of the way, making the gap much easier for the following vehicles. So the fields do tend to get compressed. It's very difficult to completely run away at the front. Unless you're completely and utterly out of sight, it's quite difficult to run away at the front, and that is what the leader here was finding as we round this final corner. These mountain roads are very, very nasty for turning a corner and suddenly finding a car. Although the plus point for the limo, unlike when you have a little hatchback against a Hummer, the Hummer's not going to move if it gets hit by the hatchback, but a big limo against these RX-8s, they don't lose as much time, anywhere near as much time. Amazingly, they managed to squeeze through the gap. Of course, going too wide around this sort of race doesn't really tend to work very well. It's very easy to get yourself into trouble, but the car on the outside here is coming to this roadblock, realizes not going to be able to get through, has to back out. The vehicle that we are following here would be promoted up to the leader. Very, very good overtake actually from the limo here to get that move done. Often it kind of comes down to a case of you got to force your opposition into a situation where they have to brake, otherwise they're going to hit one of the RX-8s. And you saw in all of that, the third place car is now caught right back up to them. In that sort of lap and a bit, third place is now right there, and third place was keen to try and get a move to the second position, tries to squeeze past on the inside. There is not much space there though. It is quite a narrow street circuit. Just they get away. I thought for sure while riding on board the car was going to end up in that blue RX-8. Somehow they made it work through there. Unfortunately, into the next part, not quite so good. And you bump into the roadblocks, you're going to get dropped back. Fourth place is now very much catching up once more to this group. So yeah, so far as taking the limos for an obstacle course race goes, it was interesting. As the race progressed, the limos kind of got a little bit more. I say a little bit more use. It's very difficult to get used to to this sort of racing. This track, I quite like this layout of Rio. It's a very difficult one though to race around at the best of times, being so many blind corners, let alone when you've got to, of course, be worrying about roadblocks. Nothing on this lap around to be worrying about on the hill. All 4 cars within shot and relatively close to one another. Now, whenever there is a period of the track where you don't see any cars, you know there's going to be a really technical section, and sure enough, that is what we had got planned. Again, though, once one of the first cars goes through, knocks one of the Mazdas out of the way ever so slightly, that makes it easier for the following vehicles. Very, very big slide from the leader. These limos were quite oversteery, and if you weren't careful, they would certainly catch you out. The leader, though, being a little bit more cautious. Second place, really going for it as we now come up towards the start-finish line. See the white car behind end up in the vehicle in the Mazda on the outside. And this is another one of the difficulties of being further back. Well, yes, you do have the advantage. You see what the leaders are coming to. If you are too close behind, then some real trouble can happen because you simply don't see. Also, we had some lag going on. We see the white and blue RX-8 get tossed around. On the white limo screen, that car wouldn't have been there. That is a laggy car. It was lagging a lot in the lobby, and the replay doesn't quite know what to do with the car model. So, yeah, a little bit of lag, that doesn't help at all. The limos, when you have the obstacles lagging about. Now, we also saw a couple of cars actually trying to move into position. The obstacle cars aren't supposed to move when they see the races, of course, to make things fair. However, sometimes it's very difficult to see when the races are approaching. We do the very, very best that we can. A couple of times, though, you might get caught out by the limo suddenly appearing far quicker around a corner than you are expecting. We were again creating chicanes, this time on the run down the hill, although a bit of a nudge from the car behind. Again, this whole visibility thing. If you are tucked up too far behind a vehicle, you can't see quite what it is that they're doing necessarily until it is too late. As we now run around the next corner, we're going side by side, and this is one of the real danger parts. As you go up the hill too wide, there is going to be very little margin for error, and you are hoping that there's not going to be an obstacle car, or that there's going to be enough time to react. Unfortunately for these guys, it was a very well placed RX-8. It was a very well placed RX-8 indeed, as everybody went to try and avoid the action. The car stuck on the outside actually got the worst of it. The vehicle that we are following, the leader here, went to try and avoid, had nowhere to go because there was a car on his outside, ended up pushing him into the wall. As we now come down through this next chicane, does a fantastic job of getting through there as quickly and cleanly as possible, and actually manages to pull a nice sized gap back to second place, who was coming under threat. As we weave through the next roadblock, not so well for the cars behind again, as we were on this final of the laps, people trying to push it that little bit more, trying to run a little bit closer. Very nearly gets caught out by another RX-8, scrapes off the wall, but is going to be far enough ahead. One more car to negotiate, parked on the outside. Not too bad to get around that one. Certainly a frantic race at the Rio mini circuit, and then of course the driver tires do not really care for your roadblocks and will go straight through. Now, you can kind of sense the liveries we were planning on using. You can see how far along we were in terms of planning for the using the limos as the obstacles themselves. I am in the road closed car that isn't being followed by the camera, in the white and orange vehicle. As we get off of the start line, the two cars on the inside immediately compromised. Both are going to have to go on to the brakes, otherwise they could end up in that first of the obstacles. Now, I wasn't sure if there was going to be a sneaky car hidden on the inside to punish those trying to get up the inside of that roadblock. There wasn't, so I went needlessly wide, but was trying to play it safe on this opening lap. Leader getting a nice margin as we run into this next corner. It is very, very close. Car in third third does a fantastic job of not tagging the rear of my vehicle. I was trying to give him as much space as possible, but you know, we're in limos. Trying to give space in limos around a street circuit is difficult. Very, very difficult. I'm still stuck on the outside, but we don't know where cars are going to be. Unfortunately, it's me making an obstacle of myself on this one. I have to turn in, suddenly lose the back end. Was not expecting the oversteer that I got. The vehicle in fourth place doesn't quite seize the roadblock in time. Is trying to get underneath the car ahead. Scrapes that and will drop back. Second, or third, trying to go for second. Dives up the inside, but can't quite get the run out of the hairpin. That gives me a little bit of position, but it's not for long as we run side by side through this kink, and I'm now going to be stuck on the outside for the first of the big braking zones, and you know, neither of us are sure when we're going to find the next RX-8, when the next roadblock, when the next problem is going to be. Up here, I'm now on the inside, and I'm happy to dive for the gap up the inside. There are other cars to negotiate, but I do make it through fourth, made it through the best of all of us. Unfortunately, he would get things wrong coming into this chicane that would kind of pinball all of us. I got pinned against the wall on the inside. Second actually had an RX-8 fired at him, which is slightly less than ideal. And all the meanwhile, this is helping the leader, because while we're busy falling over one another, trying to make our way forwards, that's given the leader a really very, very big margin. And that's helpful. As I said, second place is easier in here, but you have to be able to see the leader. You have to be able to see what the leader is coming up to, although that's not always the case, as our lead car would find out. Having run into the side of the blue Mazda, of course, he moves the car. He moves it clear for the vehicles following, which means while he was affected by that roadblock, the rest of us were clear to get through. So again, while yes, the vehicle behind might have initially been out of sort of visual range to see what the leader was doing, it doesn't take long for him to sort of start reeling it in. And I was doing a very similar thing further back in third place as well. Got to try and make the most of what you can, and sure, that lovely big gap that this white limo had been enjoying was all but eroded in, you know, that one bad roadblock or one bad obstacle for the leader, and you know that's costs a lot of time and caused trouble. And sure enough, now second place is starting to pile on the pressure as we now run into these final couple of corners on this lap. The final hairpin. Always worried about coming across a big mess of obstacles at this final hairpin, and sure enough, the cars ahead here do. And once again, you know, they've both ploughed in there trying to fight one another. Second place actually nudged one of the Mazdas further out of the way. That allowed me to take a much, much quicker line through that turn. You'll see a lot of handbraking going on as well around that corner to get these limos to turn. Everybody has that last minute swerve out of the way, second place ending up in the wall. But yeah, as these cars just, you know, nudged the Mazdas a little bit further away from the racing lines, from their sort of optimum road blocking points, made it easier for the car behind. Unfortunately, fourth would drop further back in this, so it would only be a 3-car race for the lead. Once more, the leader punted the white car that little bit further clear, so the two of us following behind could get through. We both go for the inside. There was just about a limo's gap. We got so lucky, scraping along the wall. Could have easily had sort of sticky out bit of wall catch our cars. Would have put both of us well and truly out of the race had we got in trouble there. But we made it through, and we had to take these risks. We had to try and go for it as we round the hairpin once more. Nothing for us to worry about there. Second place a little bit slow out of the hairpin, but we're going to come across another roadblock. So making the most of any acceleration out of there is kind of a little bit redundant. Where when you've got a roadblock and you see I've now fallen back, I didn't get as good of a run through the roadblock. The leader is under a bit more pressure, although still just a little bit safer further up, although he's going to take the wide line. It is safer to go out there because you get better visibility around the corner if there's somebody hiding elsewhere. But, you know, as we're coming towards the end of this race, we're going to be taking the gambles, go to the inside and hope that we get away with it. Both of our white and orange cars do make it through. We're both now back up there in the fight again. We're preferring to go the slightly riskier inside line, the leader going to the outside, but didn't cause any of us any problems once more as we're now heading up towards the final corner. Cars sliding all over the place, and this is my final opportunity, having seen the limo ahead get into all sorts of trouble. A blue RX-8 positioned right in the middle of the hairpin compromises the leader, that compromises the car chasing, gives me an opportunity to fire my limo up the inside. It's a drag race towards the finish line. It's incredibly close between the pair of us, but I would get second place on the finish line there. This was a hell of a lot of fun, actually, this race. The players then go to mess around with the drivatars, and, well, the drivatars win in that one. I don't know what happened to that RX-8. I think it might have gone to space, to be honest. There's another one bouncing free. The drivatars do not suffer for the other players there. They will punt them miles clear. Yeah, these were surprisingly good fun. I mean, the intricacy of the roadblocks, of course, were not quite as much as we have seen because, well, we've got to get a limo through. There had to be space to actually get the limos through, so they weren't the most, technical of chicanes, etc., that were created by the players. But having said that, you've still got to get the limos through them. And it did certainly at Long Beach make for a very, very exciting race between these cars weaving through the traffic. Very much a sort of a risk versus reward in some instances. But yeah, we had a hell of a race. A really very, very good. Rio mounting was a little bit tougher, but yeah, it was one hell of a challenge. I highly recommend obstacle course racing. It's an awful lot of fun. However, that is going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.